everybody, and welcome to Creator Toolbox, a show brought to you by the ServiceNow Developer Program, where we demo all the newest features on ServiceNow for every developer's toolbox. My name is Lauren McManaman, one of the now many senior developer advocates on our team, and I am thrilled to be joined by two awesome people to showcase the power of ServiceNow Studio. And those are the Director of Product Management and former developer advocate, Andrew Barnes, as well as Principal Inbound Product Manager, Matthew Ripley. So welcome to the show. Both of y'all have obviously spent a lot of time on here. So thanks again for returning to showcase all the awesome stuff in Yokohama. In this video, we'll be talking about the whole host of improvements made in this now second release of ServiceNow Studio. And with that being said, let's dive right in, gentlemen. What do you have to show us today?
Oh, thank you so much, Lauren. And I'm super excited to be here with you today. Yes, this is our second release of ServiceNow Studio. And so, what I'm going to do today is I'll talk through what our enhancements are, and then I'll show you a little demo of them. And then, after the demo, we'll talk about what's coming up in the future.
Oh,
So, yeah, we love to show little future things and hint things and tell you how to give us feedback to influence that. Yes, Yokohama is an awesome release for us. The biggest and coolest thing for you out there in the wild is that you no longer have to install ServiceNow Studio. It is installed by default.
that's what I like to
So
hear. That's what we like to hear. Even on PDIs, personal developer
even
instances.
on PDIs, so any instance that's upgraded or Z-booted into Yokohama will get uh, a ServiceNow Studio installed by default. But the thing that I will remind you is the version that gets installed automatically with family releases is always a little bit old. So you don't get the Yokohama version, the stuff I'm going to show you today, of that by default. You have to go and upgrade the application. So you'll get the Xanadu version in Yokohama automatically installed, but you'll still need to go and upgrade if you want the new features. So if you see something today that you don't have in your instance and you're on Yokohama, it's probably because you need to go upgrade that ServiceNow Studio version.
One quick question. Is there a way for users to easily check their current version of Studio? And will you kind of be showing in the demo how they can double check that they're on the latest version?
So the easiest way to check is to try and use it and see if they have the things, and if they don't,
Fair enough.
but then after that is go to the all application menu and type in ServiceNow Studio. I use the actual name to get it specifically, which is SN underscore SNS,
Mm.
because that'll just get you one result. And it'll either be in the install tab or it'll be in the update tab. And if it's in the update tab, you need to update it. And if it's not, you're on the latest version.
Good to know.
In the future, we're going to add a little banner that will let you know if you're out of date. So some other products do that, like Workflow Studio, have a little banner that say, "Hey, you might be a little bit out of date." That's something that we're be adding later this year. Just a nice little quality of improvement. So that was the first thing that's new in Yokohama is install by default, which is super cool. The next thing is we've got this strategy with the studios, which is we're trying to bring all of the developer experiences all together in one experience.
And the other experiences being Creator Studio as well as the IDE, correct?
Correct. So our Yokohama version is going to allow for quickly and easily switching between those three experiences. So you'll be able to, if you have the right access, switch between IDE, ServiceNow Studio, and Creator Studio. So all three of them support interplaying between each other as if they're Yokohama versions. And I'll show you what that looks like when we get to the demo. But the idea here is we're trying to centralize where developers need to go to do development. And so they can launch any of those three developer experiences. And then once they're in that, quickly and easily switch between the mode of development that they'd like to do at any given time without having to close out and go back to platform and find, we're really trying to remove that friction and just make, ServiceNow Studio be that one place to go for development. And then if you need to switch into another mode of development, you can do so from within ServiceNow Studio quickly and easily.
Now, from a developer perspective, why would they need to switch? So, like, For someone who's built a lot on ServiceNow like me, I mean, the studio environment is very similar to like AES kind of, in methodology. So what would I have to gain by switching back and forth between the other two, perhaps?
Oh, excellent question. So let's start with the IDE. So need to switch is probably too strong of a term. Desire to have a slightly different experience or different experience is what I'm going for here, which is if you want to use the fluent, so the ability to represent ServiceNow metadata as code and develop in a pure code environment, that's what the IDE is for. So that's its purpose and goal. And so when you want to operate in that manner, which you might want to do some of your apps that way and not all of your apps. So even the same developer may have some apps that are fluent apps and they'll want to use the
Mm,
IDE. And they'll have some apps that they aren't fluent and they don't want to use the IDE. Because
gotcha.
if you're not operating in that fluent mode, you can work in the IDE, but it's not as nice of an experience as if you just switch over to ServiceNow Studio because it's really that pro code centric experience is what the IDE is. And therefore, if it's not a Fluent app, you definitely probably will prefer not to be in IDE for doing that development. And for Creator Studio is if you're trying to build one of the apps or are working on a Creator Studio app that is a very request fulfill app,
Mhm.
which is the purpose of Creator Studio, then you might want to switch to the Creator Studio experience because it really hones in exactly what you need for that app and doesn't have any other things that could distract you. So it focuses you to just the right things for that app type, in particular if you're like supporting other folks that are doing pure no code development. So maybe you're a developer and you're helping a no code developer on their Creator Studio app. It's nice to be able to switch into that Creator Studio experience so you can see and feel exactly how they're experiencing it so you can help them better.
Love that. That's fantastic.
Anything else you want to add on that, Matthew?
Yeah, with the experience switcher, we also we baked in some different access based on the roles you have to each of the studios.
Nice.
So when Creator Studio has a couple of roles, it has a restricted role and just a standard user role. And if you're a customer that wants to configure access so that citizen developers or low coders only have Creator Studio access and they can't go get lost in ServiceNow Studio, assigning those Creator Studio roles will limit them just to Creator Studio. So
That was
you're
my next question.
yeah.
Thank you for that, Matthew. And we'll show that how to configure that in our demo today.
Ooh,
So
even
that'll be
better.
one of the places that we'll highlight in the demo. So after that, the experience switcher, the next thing I want to talk about and share about is the full app details. So when we first released ServiceNow Studio in the fall, we had a streamlined app details page. And we heard feedback from customers, and we love feedback, and we prioritize your feedback to us. So keep that coming. We heard that they wanted to see the full app details page as it exists on platform, in addition to the more curated app details page that we were going for in ServiceNow Studio. And so we added that in. So it's not a world-changing change, but it is something that we heard clearly from our early access users that this was something that they really wanted, and so we prioritized it and moved it right up to the top and got it into our very next release. So not everything that we do is going to be huge earth-shaking changes. Sometimes it's just quality of life. Developers tell us this will make my life a little bit better, and we go, I'm happy to make your life a little bit better. We'll show you that full app details page in the demo in just a few minutes.
And honestly, some of those improvements, even if they are smaller, I think reflect the how important it is for the community to be involved in vocalizing what they want from these products because ServiceNow listens. I think that's really important to showcase. So if there is something small, even if it is, just a tweak here and there, the ability that for your team to prioritize that I think is extremely meaningful. So I'm liking that you're drawing attention to it as well.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing, everyone. We love to hear your feedback. So keep that coming because we love to make prioritization decisions on customer feedback, even if it's small things. So I love to weave in small features because that's what, people get frustrated with the little frictions throughout the day. And that's what I want to remove is those little frictions.
They
I
add
want to
up.
deliver cool, big things, but also remove little frictions.
Is there a particular place that you would like to receive feedback? One place, obviously, that's always good is in the comments down below. It's a YouTube thing. We have to plug the comments down below. And if you do put any there, we will make sure that they end up in the right hands. But is there official channels as well that you would encourage people to leave their feedback?
Yeah, so the best place to leave feedback to us is in the community. So we
Mhm.
have our own section of community. So and we'll drop that link into the comments for this show. But when you're navigating in the community, in the top left menu, there's products. You can click that. You go App Engine and then ServiceNow Studio. But we'll give
Perfect.
you the direct link. But that's the very best place to give us feedback. Is into that specific forum for us because I and my team look there first for feedback. And then, any of the other official channels is great. So tell your account teams, tell your friends, put it in Slack,
Email Andrew directly. No, I'm just kidding.
email Andrew directly, tell the MVPs. So the
Yes.
more channels you use, the more you care about it, the more likely we will hear about it, and the more likely we are to do it.
Create an RPA bot to consistently comment on every video that has the word studio in the title. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you for being so transparent on that as well. It's great that there are multiple channels that y'all are keeping your eyes on.
And
So
for
the
the
next
listeners, with app details, right, that was one point where our users were telling us they have to jump back to platform to access something that wasn't in ServiceNow Studio. So if you are going to give us feedback and there's something else that you want to see in ServiceNow Studio that you don't want to have to jump back to platform to do, let us know.
Good point.
Absolutely. So that is something we're specifically focusing on this year is if there's some reason that you have to leave ServiceNow Studio, we want to know what that is. So if
Mm.
you're doing development work and you have to leave ServiceNow Studio, please let us know what that is. Because while I am and have been a developer, I don't know all the things.
Yeah.
And so let us know if there's something that is causing you to leave while you're in flight and development. So the next thing I want to share is app summarization. So, we are in the world of GenAI, and
No.
so we
No one
couldn't get
told
away
me. No one ever mentioned it, ever.
from adding in a GenAI capability. And so the first one that we've added in directly, from our team into this is called app summarization. And so it is what it sounds like. So it inspects the metadata in your app, analyzes it, and then gives you a summary. And then you can decide to edit or not that summary. And then the goal is to turn that into the description for the app. So fairly straightforward field. Summarization is one of the things that GenAI is super good at. That's a very promising area to use it. And the app summarization is just one of the steps in a stage of things that we're doing in order to help. So it sounds like app summarization is not all that amazing, but what it does is it unlocks the ability to do things like determine the difference between two different updates of an app and give that summary of the difference to an approver for whether or not this change should move forward to the owner of that app, and making sure that what they're releasing is in line with what they asked for. A governance team to approve that this is reasonable changes to this application. So summarizing metadata is a first step in unlocking those other capabilities around governance and consistency and change management that we're looking to do later in this year as a more holistic team.
Not only that too, but it makes these applications more sustainable if the developers move, if the developers change. I mean, one thing that was such an inherent problem in the past with developing on ServiceNow is that sometimes there'd just be like one developer building it all, and then they would switch jobs or get promoted and they'd get a new one. And part of their job was just deciphering all of the work that they had ever built, the tenure of that previous company. So anything that can automatically summarize the work that's been done. I mean, you saw how helpful it was initially with Flow Designer, summarizing each step of a specific flow, but now this is doing this at an entire app level. It's a huge step forward in maintaining the applications over time, depending on who is even building them.
Absolutely. So that is another one of the areas that's unlocked with this, and sort of a specific, so not just the new developer coming in, understanding it, it can even be the existing developer. And when they try and go create a new app, it can actually go and look at the summaries of the existing apps and say, hey, wait a second, you already have this other app that seems to meet this need. Maybe you want to enhance that app or leverage that app instead of making a new one. So
I didn't know that part. That's wild. That's great.
yeah, it unlocks quite a few things. So this first step is an unlocking for several other really cool enhancements. And with that, that is the summary of our January release of Yokohama for ServiceNow Studio. So now what I'd like to do is share my screen and show you, in product what some of these things look like. So the first thing that I will do is, I can't show you the first item, which is that Yokohama is installed by default. So I'll move straight on to the second thing, which was that experience switcher. So up here in the top left, where you see ServiceNow Studio, you'll see there's now a little drop down. And in this drop down, depending on your roles and what's installed in the instance, you'll see 1, 2, or 3 options. So you see ServiceNow Studio and Creator Studio here. And if I click Creator Studio, it will, in this instance, actually tell me, hey, wait a second, you don't even have Creator Studio installed. But here's how you can go and get ServiceNow Studio installed. And if I switch over to another instance, you'll see I have all 3 choices because my user role in this instance has all 3 choices available to me. And so I can choose, I'm in ServiceNow Studio right now, and I can quickly switch to Creator Studio or ServiceNow IDE, and then I can switch back. So I could switch over to ServiceNow IDE, and then I can decide I want to switch right back to ServiceNow Studio.
Here's a quick question, just a quick little, I don't know, 'cause some developers will ask this. If I'm working in a specific scope in Studio and I switch to the IDE, will it keep me in that scope or kind of take me back to the home page?
So there's a couple of ways to switch. If you use this switcher in the top left, it will actually just take you to the home page in the other experience. And the reason for that, and it was a really good question, is because, well, in ServiceNow Studio, you actually aren't working in a scope. You actually can be working in, and we expect you to be
That's
working
right.
in many scopes all at the same time.
That's right.
So
Good
you're no
point.
longer locked to being working in a singular scope. And so we didn't want to assume which scope you wanted to be in the other instance unless you specifically click one of the buttons that moves you from an existing scope in ServiceNow Studio to Creator Studio. So on our app details page, as an example, and I don't know if I have it, I think because Creator Studio is not installed, I won't actually be able to see it. But what you'll see is if I switch into ServiceNow Studio and open an app details page, like Llama Tracker, if this was a Creator Studio app, I'd have a little icon that marked it as a Creator Studio app, and I could click that, and then that would load this app in Creator Studio.
Very cool.
But in general, if I click this top left and switch, it will not keep the context because these apps, the different experiences treat scopes differently and are slightly different experiences. And so it wouldn't translate right quite a bit of the time. And so we're just going to assume we can't guess and let you pick the right way.
So what you're saying is I dated myself by asking that question. It's showing
No,
the
it was
old
a super
paradigm.
awesome question. Even our team, asked that question: should we drop them into the scope of the object that they're looking at when they do that? So
Yeah.
we had options available to us, but I think our default position right now is we're not going to force that. But if
Yeah.
we hear feedback that says, "Hey, give me some opportunities to more easily do that," then we'll incorporate it.
Nice.
So with the experience switcher comes the experience configuration. So there's a specific table
Hmm.
that I'm on right now called experience configurations. And it is how you, Matthew shared this, how you set up which users and roles are
Mm.
available to which experiences. And if you're familiar with how catalog items work, there's the available for and the not available for. And so you have to be really careful when you put things in not available for, because that will override available fors just the same way it does in catalog.
Hmm.
So we've got three choices for the three experiences. And inside these records, you can choose which roles are available for and not available for those experience types. And then those users who, have not available for, as an example, they won't see that choice in the experience switcher. So they'll only see the ones that are available for them. So you as an administrator get to come and configure these options for your users in your instance. We've shipped what we think is a good default,
Yeah.
but they're editable for you to be able to handle that for your own use cases. Because that's super important to me and my team, is making
Yeah.
sure that these things are configurable by the admins for how they work and their groups work, and not how we necessarily want or expect them to work.
Absolutely. Delegated development's huge when you want people of all development levels to start building stuff.
And the summary there, the way we have it set up by default, right? If you want to be toggling back and forth between ServiceNow Studio and Creator Studio, admin and delegated developer is the way to go. But
Hmm.
if you're a system administrator and you want to configure a team to just be in Creator Studio, use those Creator Studio roles to give them that narrow access.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew. And so our last two features that we're going to highlight today is the full app details. So right now I'm at the app details that we had for November. I want to click that little gear in the top right. It will take me to the full app details page, which is just the regular platform view of the app details with its UI actions and related lists. So very normal and expected experience here. So when you need these UI actions, this is what you need.
Hmm.
And so we wanted to make that super easy and available, and so that you didn't have to leave ServiceNow Studio to perform that. And then the last thing I want to highlight in this instance, in this demo, is the app summarization. So this is assuming you have analysis for creator
Hmm.
and that you have the role. You will see this summarize button in ServiceNow Studio. If you don't see the summarize button, you either don't have analysis for creator installed or activated,
Hmm.
or you don't have the role.
Fair
So,
enough.
um, you know, uh, it's not super clear that the summary button should be there or not. Because if you can't see it, you're not sure why. Those are the reasons why. But
Yes.
if you have the summarization button, you'll click it and it will automatically start doing the summarization. I did this a little bit earlier just so that we didn't have to wait for it to generate. So it'll always show you the last generated one,
Hmm.
which I ran, maybe like an hour ago, so that we didn't have to wait. And then you can use this as an app description, or you can
Nice.
tell it to run again. So if I
Hmm.
tell it to regenerate, it'll generate me a new one.
May I ask a
And I can
question? How long does it
absolutely.
take on average?
Um, it takes about 20 seconds. It depends on
Oh,
the size of
okay.
the app, though. So it really can fluctuate.
Yeah,
So it can be super fast if it's a small app, or it could be up to a minute if it's a large app. So it really depends on the size of the metadata objects in the app.
makes sense.
And for demo purposes, I like to always have it ready,
Yeah.
and so we could see how long it takes. But after we've got a generated one we like, we can say use this description, and then I, as a human, can edit and adjust this a little bit, and then hit save, because we want that human in the middle
Hmm.
to make sure that we didn't hallucinate or say a thing that wasn't quite right for our app. And now you can see that our app description now came from that summarization,
Wonderful.
and that unlocking capability for the other future things is now available for this app. So with that, that's the end of the screen share that I'd like to do
Fantastic.
today. And so I'll wrap up with talking a little bit about some of our future things coming later
Well,
this
before
year.
you do, I must jump in.
Ooh.
I must jump in and ask a couple more questions.
Oh, I love more questions.
Studio is a relatively new thing. Like, it came out in Xanadu. Like, it's still kind of in its, first year of development. Are there any resources that you would encourage people to check out if they've never used it before? If this is their first version, because sometimes people will skip a version when they're upgrading. If this is their first version with Studio, what do you suggest they use to kind of get onboarded to it in general?
I usually have a really, great answer, and I've got the resources for it. But I think I have a better answer this time, which is
Ooh.
I hope you don't need any.
Ooh, I like that.
You don't
Okay.
need any resources to get started using ServiceNow Studio. It's
Bold. I like it.
designed for you as a ServiceNow developer in our ecosystem. If you're familiar with our platform, you should be able to interact and use ServiceNow Studio right off the bat. If you need a little tips and help, Matthew and I have done with the advocates some shows of how to interact with ServiceNow Studio. So we'll plug the channel itself. So we've got a couple of, but the first thing I'll say is try to do it without any help and see if that's good enough, and then let me know if it wasn't, and I'll make sure that we go and add some more content. But so there is some content around how to use ServiceNow Studio, but the thing I say is I think it's good enough as it is. Without, I don't think you need any training or documentation for how to use ServiceNow Studio if you're an existing ServiceNow developer.
Fair
If you're
enough.
a developer to our platform, you definitely need some training. And we are updating all of our training in the Yokohama timeframe
Hmm.
that's for our new developers to include ServiceNow Studio in that training. So it'll be part of new developers going through our new training courses and now learning that will contain ServiceNow Studio as the training content there.
Wonderful. I love the boldness of that as well. I find that to be it's a very good design parameter as well, because like a lot of the most famous websites we use all day every day on a personal level, you don't need training for. So I like that standard of like achievement of like, yeah, you really shouldn't need it. Everyone should be able to build with it as long as they're familiar with ServiceNow. Awesome. Well, with all that kind of bookmarking and linking all out of the way, let's talk Zurich. I'm so stoked to talk about Zurich and what y'all have planned for Zurich and beyond. So Safe Harbor. Obviously, don't make any purchasing decisions. I saw your instance was named Safe Harbor, very cute. So anything that you hear today could just, go into the wind. Who knows? But what's the plan so far for Zurich?
Yeah. So actually, we're going to even talk about Prezurich because we're
Oh,
a
love it.
store app. And so our next release is going to be in May, which will be right before Knowledge 25. So we'll drop our May version right before Knowledge, and in that we'll have some cool features. Matthew, why don't you tell them what's going to be in Yokohama Store 2, which is May.
Yeah, coming up in Yokohama Store 2, we've got a couple exciting ones. Andrew alluded to this earlier, but we are adding better links between Creator Studio and ServiceNow Studio so that you can jump app to app rather than using the switcher and switching studios wholesale. So you'll see on the ServiceNow Studio app details page, you'll see badges for apps created in Creator Studio and the link to jump directly in there. We'll do the same badges for apps that have been created in the IDE, so you know which
Nice.
apps are supposed to be managed in the IDE and in Fluent. Also coming up in the future this year, we're going to add AI search to ServiceNow Studio. So right now we've got Zing search, but AI search will give us a lot more better search results and a little bit more user friendly interface.
Nice. Very
And
exciting.
then moving forward from that, some other future things this year is we've got dark mode coming for both
Ooh,
ServiceNow Studio and all of the builders that are contained within. So you'll be able to leverage dark mode for developer content later on in this year. After that, we're looking at enhancing that app overview page. So that app details page that we have in ServiceNow Studio, we've heard feedback that they wanted that full one from platform. That, but we also hear this driving need for a more overview like view of what's contained in the app. So the summary is nice, but we're looking at some other ways to do some visualizations and some summaries of how this app works and how this app works with other apps. It's all stuff that's coming down the pipe. Then after that, one thing that we can link to this section of this call. I did it for the previous one, which is source control is
Ah,
coming to the ServiceNow Studio,
nice.
which is something that is highly anticipated from especially the folks using the PDIs,
Of
because that's
course.
where source control is leveraged the most, is in those PDIs. So that is coming, and then anything else that you want to share for the rest of this year? We've got some other cool stuff, but I think we'll save some of those for the next show, unless you have something you want to tease out, Matthew.
One more thing that is coming out in Yokohama Store 2 is the ability for our File Navigator in ServiceNow Studio to handle large applications. So you should see dramatically improved load times if you're
Nice.
opening applications that have a lot of metadata files in them. And then I think the rest of the exciting stuff that's coming up later, and we can save that for the next show as well.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so you have to.
Can't reveal everything. You have to keep a
Yeah,
couple
you got to
secrets.
come to our talk at Knowledge 25.
Even
So
better.
I've got some talks, and we'll talk about our roadmap at Knowledge 25. So join that session and Matthew's lab, and you'll get some more of our future plans. And especially if you're attending Knowledge, please. So we'll be in the main hall at the platform area. So my team will be there, and we'd love to hear from you. So even if you don't attend our sessions, still come up to us and tell us what you like about ServiceNow and what you'd like to see improved in the future. And with that, thank you so much, Lauren, for having us on today and talking about ServiceNow Studio. I always love, contributing to the ServiceNow Dev Program channel, because our developers are my favorite people at
Yay.
ServiceNow and our ecosystem, and so I love doing these.
Well, I couldn't thank y'all enough for coming. Like the content you help us create is so valuable, not only to us, but to all the people that watch it. Y'all help me consistently create some of the most watched videos of Breakpoint too. So I really, really appreciate all the hard work that you put into not only creating these products, but helping us evangelize them and teach others about them. So it's so meaningful to me, and I appreciate you carving out time to do this amidst like all the chaos that's going on behind the scenes for the release, for knowledge and everything. So that's all we have for this episode of Creator Toolbox. We have a bunch more episodes coming out. We have some that have already come out for Yokohama, so please check those out. They will be linked down below. And again, thank you, watcher, for joining us here today. Be sure to like this video if you found it helpful, subscribe if you would like more, and we'll see y'all on the next episode of Creator Toolbox. Thank you, everybody.